Cosmic laws. Example. A familiar saying goes, "Do as I say, not as I do." 5 centuries before the Christian era, Confucius taught, "The superior man is ashamed that his words exceed his deed." Through the Analects of Confucius, the superior man is a literary device used to portray the character of a human being who sets a good example. There is a universal law that upholds this belief, the divine law of example. Stephen Sander, a Sikh-Canadian businessman, is a good example. In December 1989, after providing for his family, he gave away his fortune of $100 million, placing it in a trust fund to help the sick and starving in third world countries. Mr. Sander returned to school teaching, but because he knows spiritual precepts and puts them into practice, he already is a world teacher, particularly for the fortunate, by exempling the divine laws of give and take, sacrifice, love, free will, and other principles of spirit. In his Gospel, St. John expressed the exemplifying of divine laws in one's life in terms of making the Word become flesh, that is, making the thoughts of divine mind, the principles of our Father and Mother God, an actual, tangible reality, as Christ Jesus did. The dictionary defines example as something selected to show the character or quality of the rest, a sample, a specimen, or person or thing worthy of imitation, or an instance of something to be avoided. An example is an instance that illustrates a principle, method, general rule, or truth. But to fathom the omnipresence of this law, we must refer to the definition of the explanation of example given by Sananda on May 21, 1972. As you are an individual, you still are a representative of a type of consciousness, a certain type of equation or experience. You have relations in family, sociological, national, religious, racial structure, even if it is the only incarnation in which you have participated in that particular race, religion, nation, family, or socio-political group. You represent automatically all that is involved in that group consciousness, whether they be in earth or whether they be in the astral. You have not begun to comprehend the tremendous scope of each person's potential, of each person's responsibility, and of each person's real functioning as a channel of God or as a son of God. To give a very simple example of this, let us say you are a black writer in the United States whose parents or grandparents have been slaves brought over from Africa. You then represent all the slaves who were brought over from Africa. You represent the family group in which you are involved. You represent all writers in that particular category as a profession. You represent the United States of America in the particular aspect of that difficult sociological pattern. Therefore, anything you say and do, anything you experience, anything you achieve, and anything you deny reflects back upon your own individual, personal ongoing, and record as a soul evolving from mortal into immortal expression. You also represent each and every one of those structures or groups who likewise are attempting to raise themselves from lower depth into higher consciousness and expressions upon the earth planet and into all eternity. This is the function you normally fulfill. It is the function every flower fulfills in its own species. It is the function every animal fulfills for its species. It is the function every mineral fulfills for the species or the type it represents. It is likewise so for every one of the elements as they grow or evolve into new patterns and equations for the fulfillment of the creative principle that is involved, which is our Father, Mother, God. We all are the sons of it, the creation of this one life force. Let us follow Sananda's guidelines and make a list of each grouping of people that we represent and for whom exemplifying spiritual law is the normal function we are to fulfill for them and ourselves. Judging from the above communication, it can safely be said that if every human being fully knew the extent of his obligation as an exemplar under this law, struggles for power, dominance, and control would soon come to an end. For each would realize how full his plate truly is without grabbing for more that is rightfully another's. Example as a divine law means that we are continuously responsible to others. The higher in spiritual stature we climb, the more people we set an example for. But no matter where one is on the scale of spiritual development, each child of God is a representative pattern that others in some way will follow. This principle does not choose for us which pattern we should follow. The divine law of free will gives us the freedom to choose any role model or any pattern we want. Ultimately, the perfect expression of this law manifests when we choose and then actually do God's will. Our obligation under this law is twofold. First, to embrace the perfect pattern from which all are cut, God's image and likeness. Second, to take the internal, divine pattern and externalize it for all those whom we represent and to whom we are responsible. All life forms are to live this law and to be good examples. This is what Confucius meant when he said, "Let the ruler be a ruler, the minister a minister, the father be a father, and the son be a son." As we provide an example for others, so others provide an example to us, which is the other important aspect of this law. Whose example are we following now? Is he or she a proper role model? Whom are we to follow? If we were Japanese snow monkeys living on Kushima Island, we would be following the example of Imo. Biologists who long had studied this group of macaques set out sweet potatoes on the beach to supplement the monkeys' diet. Before their eyes, they saw a 2-year-old macaque named Imo invent the practice of washing the sand off the potatoes in the ocean before eating them. Within 10 minutes, the majority of the troop learned to do the same thing. The scientists had also been scattering edible grain on the sand. For 2 years, the monkeys had picked it up 1 grain at a time. Again, it was Imo who made the breakthrough discovery. Imo gathered handfuls of sand and grain and threw them in the water. The sand sank, leaving the floating grain to be easily scooped up from the surface of the sea. Thus, the troop learned another, more efficient harvesting technique. Even by human standards, Imo's exemplary behavior, discovering not one but 2 entirely new ways of foraging, which will benefit the welfare of the group for generations to come, is nothing short of heroic. Throughout history, humankind always has had a seemingly infinite array of heroes, heroines, spiritual guides, and authority figures. In mythic literature and legend, the Babylonian Gilgamesh, the Greek Achilles, the Celtic Amycus and Aemilius, the English King Arthur, the Indic Karna, and the Japanese Hiruka are a tiny sampling of heroes who exhibit desirable qualities. The tradition of the spiritual guide as a living example of divine model for life is in every major religion and higher philosophy. Historical figures like Pythagoras and Socrates are found in ancient Greek culture. The Jewish tradition contains true prophets of God, such as Moses and Elijah. In Christianity, there is Jesus. Gautama Buddha and Bodhisattvas belong to Buddhism, and the patriarchal system serves a similar function in Chan or Zen Buddhism. The Lama plays the same role in Tibetan Buddhism. The need of a disciple to find the proper Shakya or spiritual master was and still is of utmost importance for Sufis as well as Orthodox Muslims. The same is true of finding a guru in Hinduism. These few examples point out the importance man has placed on a role model and therefore on the divine law of example. Yet there are pitfalls in choosing a spiritual guide. The obvious mistake is choosing a poor example. Another pitfall is apotheosis, in which people make a good god out of a person because he or she is a good example of divine traits. Apotheosis is particularly harmful when those of a low, impure consciousness are given divine status. But as Sananda indicated on May 20th, 1972, these setbacks must not discourage us from following a true leader, such as he was as Jesus, but as Moses, Socrates, Melchizedek, and Elijah. I also had given a number of expressions and experiences that would and could hold the light steady for that level and period of time, for those series of evolvement, and to bring about an education of the masses in a series of development and sociological advancement and expression. That you are to follow and remonstrate as well as demonstrate is our purpose in setting forth these doctrines and example in order that you may follow them and have a pathway safe and true unto your own true evolvement and demonstration for all who are on the race consciousness, evolving from third into fourth dimensional expression. In addition to all the excellent secular and religious examples past and present that we can use to help guide us, Sananda explained on May 21st, 1972, that there is also an internal pattern we need to exemplify. There is a simple measuring rod for all to follow. You each have the Christ self within, which guides, protects, and leads you individualized soul expression. You each are capable of seeking the guidance and the instruction from the Christ self within, regardless of whether you are aware of the contact and regardless of whether you are sure of the spiritual union of the Christ self with the mortal self. Therefore, it is your requirement and it is our desire that you seek this over and above all other yearnings and instructions. Regardless of who the teacher is upon the earth, regardless of who the teacher may be, including myself, upon the etheric or the celestial plane, you must seek and unify with that Christ self within you. Does this really mean that we should seek guidance from our higher self over and above our human guides, whom we greatly admire and with whom we physically can communicate? Should we seek spiritual instructions first from our Christ self over and above the greatest living examples in the solar system, Lord Maitreya, Archangel Michael, and the rest of the spiritual hierarchy? Should we seek first contact with our own I Am Self instead of with Sananda himself? The answer is yes. This is the awesome and magnificent meaning of Jesus' simple command to his disciple: follow me. Follow me not only because of who I am as a leader, the Prince of Earth. Follow me not only because my life exemplified the way, the power, and the principles of Spirit. Follow me because I am the example of the Christ self within every one of us who says, follow me. Follow my instructions, the divine guidance available to you always. Why is this instruction emphasized so much by every true spiritual master? Sananda gave the answer as he continued his previous discourse. For until you seek and unify with that Christ self within you, and until you have begun the anchoring of the light body with the physical, the mental, and the emotional bodies of your mortal expression, the immortality of your spiritual self shall not be realized. Regardless of whom you seek, regardless of what path you follow, regardless of whom you rely on for your strength, there is no other more secure, more important than your own spiritual self within. The immortality of your own individual expression has to be the Christ or higher self within you unified with the mortal and subconscious areas of your self-expression. It is not beyond our ability to bring this unification process to your attention, but it is beyond our ability to solidify and to ensure a final and lasting anchorage of the spiritual self with the mortal self. That has to come from within the individual's consciousness each time, no matter how many times it has been performed, has been learned, and has been accepted in the past. Each step of the way, each repetition of the unification of the spiritual with the mortal has to be done from within the individual's consciousness, and by his own self-will to accept, to work with, to cleanse, and to transmute the personality self or the mortal consciousness with the immortal or spiritual I Am Self presence. This is the point of law where personal responsibility enters. Nobody else can anchor our light body and higher conscious for us. No one can provide an example for all that we represent as powerfully and as completely as we can. What if we should fail? There always has been and always will be alternates who will stand in when vacancy occur. But when we are guided by Spirit through our Christ self, we are the best, both for ourselves and for those whom we serve by example. Let us then be love in example. For God so loved the world that he gave all his sons, every child of Spirit, one to another, so that whosoever believes in his God self should not perish, but have eternal life. Heavenly Spirit, thank you for all of us. End of law.